Question number 6, Kevin Hague.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Health and asks, why did he ask the Ministry of Health to review the minutes of the Health Promotion Agency regarding Katherine Rich's conduct when the Ministry of Health is not the agency responsible for determining whether board members have acted appropriately at meetings?
The Honourable Dr. Jonathan Coleman.
Mr. Speaker, because to date the member has asked 59 written and oral questions about Katherine Rich. My office initially advised me that if current trends continue, I will have to answer a further 8,732 questions from the member about Katherine Rich before the next election. But on checking, that figure is actually 1,255. It is the role of the Ministry to assist me in dealing with this large and pointless workload.
Supplementary question,
Mr. Speaker.
Kevin Hague.
Can he confirm that Katherine Rich, acting in her role on the board of the Health Promotion Agency, has never declared a conflict of interest with any specific agenda item or withdrawn from discussion or participation on any agenda item?
Order. Honourable Dr. Jonathan Coleman.
This is going to get very tedious. We've covered this in the previous 59 questions, but the answer is still no.
Supplementary question, Kevin Hague.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What actions will he take given the Health Promotion Agency minutes and her own statements show that Katherine Rich has never recused herself from a meeting or a discussion of the Health Promotion Agency board in which she has an interest, which she is obliged to do under Section 66A of the Crown Entities Act 2004?
Honourable Dr. Jonathan
Exactly
Coleman.
the same actions I've outlined in the previous 59 answers.
Point of order, Chris Hipkins.
Mr. Speaker, on a regular basis, ministers are asked questions in the House that relate to material they've provided in written question answers. It cannot be acceptable for them to simply say, I've already answered that in a written question. Ministers are answerable at question time in the House, and to suggest otherwise is ludicrous.
And I think on this occasion it would be helpful if the Minister had actually said he's going to take no action. That would have been more helpful to the House. But the Minister is absolutely responsible for his answer, and his answer certainly addressed the question. It's for members of this House and for the public to just defy or to be satisfied as to the quality of the answer, but the question has been addressed. Point of order.
To further clarify from you, are you suggesting that if a minister has made a statement in another forum, whether it be a media stand-up or a written parliamentary question or an OIA request, they can simply say, I've already answered that in some other forum and get off the hook from answering oral questions in the House?
Order. No, I'm saying in this order. I'm saying in this particular case, in response to the question was asked, the Minister has addressed the question. I've acknowledged it. Order. Order. If the senior whip's going to continue to interject when I'm on my feet giving a ruling to him, I will be asking him to leave the chamber. I have said that the answer given, whilst maybe not the most helpful to the House, has addressed the question. That is the end of the matter. Supplementary question, Kevin Hague.
How does the Minister reconcile the answer he has just given the House and his continued acceptance of Ms Rich taking part in Health Promotion Agency Board discussions on board agenda items about tobacco and alcohol with Section 66A of the Crown Entities Act that says a member who is interested in a matter relating to a statutory entity must not vote or take part in any discussion or decision of the board or otherwise participate in any activity of the entity that relates to that matter?
Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Dr. Jonathan Coleman.
Mr. Speaker, because under Section 67 of the Crown Entities Act, it states that the board must notify the responsible minister of a failure to comply with Section 63 or Section 66 and of the acts affected as soon as practicable after becoming aware of the failure, and I have had no such notification.
Supplementary question, Kevin Hague.
Can the Minister confirm that the only way Mrs Rich is allowed to participate in any way in issues she has an interest in under the Crown Entities Act is if her chairperson, Lee Mathias, grants an exception to the requirements of section 66A in writing prior to the meeting and records that in the annual report. And can he also confirm that no such exceptions are recorded in the annual reports?
Honourable Dr Jonathan Coleman.
Mr Speaker, section 66A says a member who is interested in a matter relating to statutory entity must not vote or take part in any discussion or decision of the board or any committee relating to the matter or otherwise participate in any activity of the entity that relates to the matter. And frankly, I am very confident that Lee Mathias has managed all this absolutely appropriately, and if he has concerns about her integrity, he should air them outside the House, which I don't think he will.
Supplementary question, Kevin Hague.
Does the Minister agree that the reason there are strict rules around the management of conflicts of interest on Crown entities is to avoid exactly the situation currently playing out in the Health Promotion Agency, where a tobacco and alcohol lobbyist participates in decisions that could impact directly on the bottom line of the businesses they represent?
The Honourable Dr Jonathan
I totally
Coleman.
disagree with the premise of his question.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Kevin Hague.
Given the Minister's comments that he is confident that all matters related to conflicts of interest have been well managed, will he now ask the State Services Commission to check whether Katherine Rich acted appropriately in the management of her interests as a member of the agency's board, given the Commission has the statutory authority to do so, whereas the Ministry of Health does not?
Honourable Dr Jonathan Coleman.
No, because there's no need to.
Question number 7, Ron Mark.